The explosion ripped through the east wing of Silvergate Military Hospital at 0347 hours. Glass shattered inward like frozen rain, alarms screamed into the darkness, and somewhere beneath the smoke a child was crying. Emily Carter didn't flinch. She was already moving before the second blast hit, her white nursing clogs silent against blood-slicked tile, her pale hands reaching not for gauze or morphine, but for the M4 carbine mounted inside the broken security locker. She chambered around with the kind of muscle memory that doesn't come from training videos. A young corpsman stared at her, wild-eyed, gasping. "What are you—" She didn't answer. She never did. Because the quiet blonde nurse everyone dismissed as too soft, too slow, too nice for a combat zone had just become the most dangerous person in the building. If you want to see how far a story about invisible strength can travel, drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Like this video. And stay until the very end, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew. Emily Carter had been a ghost at Silvergate for 11 months. Not because she tried to disappear, she just never made noise. Never corrected anyone when they mispronounced her last name or forgot she'd been assigned to third shift trauma. She showed up on time, took the hardest rotations without complaint, and kept her head down while the louder nurses claimed credit for her work. It wasn't strategy, it was survival. She'd learned a long time ago that being underestimated was safer than being seen. The hospital sat on the edge of a desert no one cared about, a sprawling military compound ringed by barbed wire and bored sentries. It treated casualties from 3 forward operating bases, most of them Marines with shrapnel wounds or heat stroke or the kind of trauma that didn't show up on x-rays. Emily worked the overnight rotation in the intensive care unit, where the lights stayed dim and the only sounds were ventilators and footsteps. She liked it that way. Quiet meant control. Quiet meant she could think, but quiet also meant invisible. "Carter, you're too slow." That was Sergeant Vance, the charge nurse, a wiry woman with a voice like gravel and a habit of snapping her fingers when she wanted something. She stood in the doorway of the supply room, arms crossed, watching Emily restock IV bags with the kind of deliberate care that drove Vance crazy. "We've got 3 fresh admits coming in from the field. I need those carts prepped now, not whenever you feel like finishing." Emily didn't look up. "They're ready." "Then why are you still in here?" "Because I'm restocking what we used last shift." Her voice was flat, almost monotone. Not rude, just factual. "If I don't do it now, second shift won't have enough saline for morning rounds." Vance made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a growl. "You know what your problem is, Carter. You think too much. This isn't a classroom, it's a war zone. You need to move faster, think less, and stop acting like you're the only one who knows how to do this job." Emily set down the last bag, turned, and met Vance's eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Long enough to acknowledge, not long enough to challenge. Understood. Vance left without another word. Emily went back to work. She'd heard it all before. Too slow, too cautious, too quiet. The other nurses said it behind her back and sometimes to her face, and she never defended herself because defense required explanation. An explanation led to questions she couldn't answer. So she let them think whatever they wanted, let them assume she was just another small-town girl who joined the service because she didn't know what else to do. Let them believe she was out of her depth. It was easier that way. The truth was, Emily had been a nurse at Silvergate for less than a year, but she'd been in uniform for 8. Different uniform. Different job. Different name, technically, though the paperwork had been handled quietly and the record sealed even quieter. She didn't talk about it. Didn't list it on her resume. When the intake officer at Silvergate asked about her prior service, she'd said medical logistics and left it at that. He hadn't pushed. No one ever did. A blonde woman with soft eyes and a gentle voice didn't look like someone who'd spent 3 years pulling triggers in places that didn't exist on maps. So she let them see what they expected. A nurse. Nothing more. By 0200 hours, the ICU was full. A 19-year-old lance corporal with a collapsed lung. A staff sergeant missing his left foot. A contractor with third-degree burns across 40% of his body. Emily moved between them with the kind of efficiency that looked effortless but wasn't, checking vitals, adjusting drips, whispering reassurances to the ones who were awake enough to hear. She didn't chat, didn't make small talk, just did the work. "Hey, Carter." She turned. It was Corporal Hayes, one of the medics from the ER, leaning against the doorframe with a styrofoam cup of coffee that smelled like burnt rubber. He was young, maybe 22, with a sunburn that never quite healed and a grin that suggested he thought everything was a joke. "You ever smile?" he asked. "Not really." "Come on, not even a little?" He mimed a tiny grin with his fingers. "I've seen you work a 12-hour shift without saying more than 10 words. It's weird." Emily didn't answer. She adjusted the ventilator settings on a bed 3 and made a note on the chart. Hayes didn't take the hint. You know, Vance thinks you're going to wash out, says you don't have the stomach for this. Vance can think whatever she wants. You don't care. No. He blinked, like he'd never met someone who actually meant it. Then he shrugged and walked off, muttering something about ice queens and robots. Emily didn't watch him go. She'd stopped caring what people thought about her a long time ago. Caring meant attachment. Attachment meant vulnerability. And vulnerability got people killed. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, in a city whose name she still couldn't say out loud, watching a teammate bleed out because someone hesitated half a second too long. She didn't hesitate anymore. Didn't feel. Didn't let anyone close enough to matter. It was safer that way. At 02:45, the first sign of trouble came through the radio. Emily was restocking the crash cart when she heard it, a brief squelch of static, then a voice, clipped and tense. Perimeter, this is Tower 3. We've got movement on the east fence, can't get a visual, requesting floodlight sweep. A pause, then, copy Tower 3, stand by. Emily stopped what she was doing and listened. The ICU radio was tuned to the security channel, mostly for emergencies, but Emily had started paying attention to it months ago. You learn things that way. Patrol schedules, shift changes. When the guards were paying attention and when they weren't. Right now, they were paying attention. Tower 3, this is perimeter control. Floodlights are up. What's your status? Another pause, longer this time. Negative contact. Must have been an animal. Disregard. The line went quiet. Emily set down the supplies and walked to the window. The compound was dark, except for the perimeter floodlights, which cast long shadows across the empty motor pool. She counted the guard towers. 4 visible. All manned. No alarms, no movement. But something was wrong. She couldn't explain it. Not in words. It was a feeling, the kind that lived in the back of her skull and whispered when things didn't line up. She'd felt it before. In Kandahar, 30 seconds before an IED went off. In Mosul, 2 minutes before a sniper opened fire. In a dozen other places where survival meant listening to the part of your brain that didn't need evidence. She felt it now. At 03:20, the power flickered, just once. A brief stutter in the overhead lights, barely noticeable, gone before anyone could comment. Emily was halfway through charting when it happened, and she froze. Pen still touching paper, eyes locked on the fluorescent strip above her. The lights stabilized, the ventilators hummed, everything went back to normal. But the feeling didn't go away. She set down the chart and walked to the supply closet, pulled out a flashlight, tested the beam against her palm. Bright. Fully charged. She clipped it to her belt, then grabbed a second one and set it on the counter next to the nurse's station. Carter, what are you doing? Vance appeared in the hallway, clipboard in hand, looking annoyed. We got rounds in 10 minutes. Backup power just came on. So, that's what it's for. It shouldn't need to. Emily clicked the flashlight off and set it on the counter within reach. Main grid doesn't go down unless something's wrong with the transformer. Or someone cut the line. Vance stared at her like she'd just started speaking another language. Are you serious right now? It's a power flicker. It happens. Stop trying to turn everything into a crisis. Emily didn't argue. She just pulled a third flashlight from the cabinet and placed it next to the others. You're paranoid, Vance muttered, turning away. And you're wasting time. Maybe. But paranoia had kept Emily alive before. She'd seen what happened to people who ignored their instincts, who assumed everything was fine until it wasn't, who waited for permission to act instead of acting first. She wasn't going to be one of them. At 03:30, it happened again. This time longer, 3 full seconds of darkness before the backup generators kicked in. The ICU went silent, except for the patients and the low hum of emergency power. Emily moved to the supply cabinet and pulled out the go bag she'd packed 2 weeks ago. No one had noticed. No one ever did. Inside, trauma kit, water, MREs, and a radio. She slung it over her shoulder. Carter. Vance was staring at her now, clipboard forgotten. What the hell is going on? I don't know yet. Then why are you... Because if I'm wrong, we lose 5 minutes. If I'm right and we're not ready, we lose everything. Vance opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. For once, she didn't have a comeback. Emily pulled the radio from the bag and keyed the security channel. Perimeter, this is ICU. What's your status on main power? Static. She tried again. Perimeter, this is ICU. Do you copy? More static, then faint and crackling. ICU, stand by. The line went dead. Emily's jaw tightened. She turned to Hayes, who was standing in the doorway, eyes wide. Hayes, I need you to do exactly what I say. Okay? Emergency shutdown. All non-essential equipment. Ventilators stay on battery backup. Everything else goes dark. Do it now. But now. He moved. Vance didn't. She just stood there, staring at Emily like she'd never seen her before. Carter, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Why? Emily didn't answer. She was already moving toward the locked cabinet at the back of the room, the one marked authorized personnel only. She didn't have a key, didn't need one. She braced her boot against the lower hinge and kicked, once, hard, and the door buckled inward. Inside was another go bag. Standard issue for security forces. Trauma kit, water, MREs, and a rifle. She pulled it out, checked the magazine, chambered around. Vance's voice came out as a whisper. What the fuck? Emily slung the rifle over her shoulder and turned to face her. If I'm wrong, you can write me up. If I'm right, you'll thank me later. Carter, you can't just... The explosion cut her off. The east wing disintegrated. Not collapsed, not damaged, disintegrated. A sound like the sky cracking open, a shockwave that knocked charts off the desk and shattered every window on the south side of the building. And then fire. Orange and black and roaring. Emily dropped to a crouch, one hand braced against the counter, the other still gripping the rifle. Her ears rang. Her vision tunneled, but her mind was clear. She counted to 3. Then she moved. Everyone down! Her voice cut through the chaos, sharp and cold. Not loud, just absolute. Patients stay in beds. Staff to the floor, now. Vance was on her knees, staring at the broken windows, mouth open. What the hell? Get down. Emily didn't wait. She grabbed Vance by the shoulder and pulled her behind the nurse's station, then turned to Hayes, who was frozen in the hallway. Hayes, circuit breaker. Kill the lights. Make this room invisible. He blinked at her. What? If they can't see us, they can't target us. Do it. He ran. The second explosion hit 30 seconds later, closer this time, and the lights went out completely. Emergency power failed. The ventilators switched to battery backup. In the sudden darkness, Emily could hear everything, screaming from the east wing, boots pounding in the corridor, someone shouting orders that made no sense. She clicked on the flashlight and swept the beam across the ICU. All 6 patients accounted for. No visible injuries. Vance was still on the floor, breathing hard. Hayes was at the circuit breaker, hands shaking but steady enough. Carter. Vance's voice cracked. What do we do? Emily didn't answer. She was already at the door, rifle up, scanning the hallway. Smoke was pouring in from the east, thick and black, carrying the smell of burnt plastic and something worse. She counted the exits. 2. Both compromised. The stairwell to the west was clear, but it led straight to the lobby, which meant exposure. The service elevator was out, no power. That left the maintenance corridor, which most people didn't even know existed. She turned back to Vance. How many patients can we move? What? How many can we move? Vance stared at her, then at the beds, then back. 3, maybe 4. The rest are on ventilators. Then we move 3. Hayes, grab the portable monitors. Vance, disconnect IV lines, but keep the bags. We're going to the maintenance corridor. There's no oxygen down there. There's no oxygen up here if this building collapses. Move. They moved. Emily took point, rifle low, flashlight mounted under the barrel. She didn't explain, didn't justify. Just led. Behind her, Hayes and Vance wrestled the first patient onto a gurney, a young Marine with a chest tube and a morphine drip who kept asking what was happening. Emily didn't answer him either. She was too busy listening. Voices ahead, 2 of them. Unfamiliar cadence. Not English. She killed the flashlight and pressed against the wall, rifle up. Second floor secure, no resistance. Copy. Moving to ICU. Her jaw tightened. She counted to 3, then stepped into the hallway. 2 men, body armor. No military insignia. The first one didn't see her until the muzzle was 6 inches from his chest. She didn't give him time to process it. 2 shots, center mass. Suppressed. He dropped. The second man spun toward her, reaching for his weapon, and she put another round through his throat before he could clear the holster. Both down. No hesitation. Behind her, Hayes made a choking sound. Emily stepped over the bodies, checked their gear, radios, encrypted, coordinated. She pulled one free, clipped it to her belt, and kept moving. Carter? Hayes' voice was barely a whisper. They were coming for us. But they were coming for us. She turned to face him, and her voice didn't waver. If I'd waited, they'd have walked into that ICU and killed everyone in it, patients included. Do you understand? He nodded, pale. She turned back to the corridor. Keep moving. They made it to the maintenance corridor without another encounter. It was narrow, dimly lit by emergency strips, and smelled like mildew and old paint. Emily positioned the gurneys against the far wall, out of sight from the main hallway, and did a quick head count. 3 patients, 2 staff, all accounted for. "Stay here," she said. "Don't make noise. Don't use lights. If anyone comes through that door who isn't me, you run. Understand?" Vance grabbed her arm. "Where are you going?" "To find out who's doing this." "You can't." Emily pulled free, gentle but firm. "Yes, I can." She left before Vance could argue. The corridor was chaos. Smoke thick enough to taste, sparks raining from broken ceiling panels, people running in every direction without a plan. Emily moved against the current, rifle low, scanning faces. Most were hospital staff, nurses, orderlies, a few doctors, none of them armed, none of them trained. She grabbed a passing private by the collar, pulled him close. "Where's security forces?" "I don't know, they're not responding." "How many hostiles?" "I don't know." She let him go, kept moving. The radio on her belt crackled. She keyed it. "All units, this is perimeter. We have multiple breaches. East gate is compromised. West gate holding. Command, do you copy?" Muslim static. Then a different voice, calm and cold. "Perimeter, this is actual. Command is offline. All units fall back to secondary positions and await orders." Emily stopped. "Command is offline. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate. Which meant this wasn't a random attack. It was planned, coordinated, and whoever was running it knew exactly what they were doing." She changed direction, heading for the command center on the 2nd floor. The stairwell was dark, littered with debris, and she took the steps 2 at a time, rifle up. At the top, she stopped, listened. Voices. American this time. Panicked. "Can't reach the colonel. Try the backup line. It's dead. Everything's dead." Emily stepped into the room. 6 people, all junior enlisted, all staring at screens that showed nothing but static. One of them, a staff sergeant with blood on his sleeve, looked up and saw her. "Who the hell are you?" "Nurse Carter, ICU. What's your status?" "We're blind. Cameras are down, comms are down. We can't reach anyone outside the compound. We don't even know how many are inside." Emily set the rifle on the table and pulled out the radio she'd taken from the dead hostile. "Use this. It's their frequency. You can listen in." He stared at it. "Where did you get this?" "Off a body." "You..." He stopped, processed. "You killed someone?" "2. There are more coming. You need to get your people armed and positioned, now." "We're not combat." "Then you're dead." Her voice was flat. "Because they are." The room went silent. She picked up the rifle and headed for the door. "Wait." The staff sergeant stood up. "Where are you going?" "To even the odds." She didn't wait for a response. The ICU was still dark when she got back. Vance was exactly where Emily had left her, crouched behind the nurse's station with Hayes and the patients. All of them stared when she walked through the door, rifle slung over her shoulder, fresh blood on her hands. "What did you do?" Vance whispered. Emily set the rifle on the counter and pulled off her gloves. "Bought us time." "You killed people. 4. Vance looked like she might throw up. "You can't just..." "They were armed. They were organized. And they were moving toward this floor." Emily's voice was calm, clinical. "If I hadn't stopped them, they'd be here right now. And we'd all be dead." Hayes was shaking. "How do you know how to do that?" Emily didn't answer. Outside, engines roared, helicopters, heavy ones. She walked to the window and looked out. The compound was lit up now, searchlights, vehicle-mounted floods, and the unmistakable silhouette of Blackhawks descending fast. Boots hit the ground. Voices barked orders. The cavalry had arrived. But it was the voice on the radio that made her stop. "All personnel, this is Colonel Renner. We have control of the perimeter. Medical staff, remain in place and await extraction. Hostile forces are being neutralized." And then, quieter, almost hesitant. "Nurse Carter, if you're listening, Command wants to know who the hell you are." Vance turned to stare at her. Hayes too. Even the patients who were conscious enough to follow the conversation. Emily clicked off the flashlight and set it down. "Just a nurse," she said, but her hands didn't shake, and the rifle was still warm. The colonel's voice crackled through the radio again, sharper this time, cutting through the static and the distant thrum of rotor blades. "Carter, Emily Carter, if you can hear this, identify your location and stand by for extraction." Emily didn't reach for the transmit button. She stood at the window, watching the Blackhawks settle onto the tarmac like predators claiming territory, their searchlights carving hard white lines through the smoke. Soldiers poured out, full combat gear, rifles up, moving in formation. Professional, fast, but late. Behind her, Vance found her voice. "You need to answer him." No, I don't. He's a colonel, and I'm busy. Emily turned from the window and walked back to the nurse's station, setting the rifle down carefully, like it was something fragile. Her hands were steady. They always were. Hayes, how are the ventilators holding? Hayes blinked, still pale, still processing the last 20 minutes of his life. Batteries are at 60%. Maybe another 2 hours before we need to switch them out. Then we have time. She pulled a fresh pair of gloves from the box on the counter, snapped them on. Vance, I need you to do a full check on the patients we left in the ICU. Vitals, lines, anything that could have shifted during the blasts. Can you do that? Vance stared at her. You're acting like nothing happened. Something happened. Now we deal with it. You killed 4 people. Emily met her eyes, and her voice didn't change. I know. How are you so... Vance stopped, searching for the word. Calm. Because panicking doesn't save anyone. Emily stripped off the gloves, tossed them in the biohazard bin, and started walking toward the ICU. And we still have 6 patients who need us. Vance didn't follow, not right away. But Hayes did, hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he should be more afraid of what was outside or what was standing in front of him. The ICU was a mess. Broken glass covered the floor, sparkling under the emergency lights. One of the monitors had been knocked off its stand, the screen cracked, but still beeping. The ventilators hummed, oblivious. Emily moved between the beds, checking each patient with the same methodical precision she'd used every other night for 11 months. Blood pressure, oxygen saturation, IV flow rate. She didn't rush, didn't skip steps. The chaos outside didn't matter, not here, not now. The young Marine in bed 2 was awake, eyes wide, chest heaving against the restraints. He tried to speak around the breathing tube, made a choking sound. Emily was beside him in 2 steps. Don't talk. You're intubated. Nod if you understand. He nodded. You're safe. The attack is over. Help is here. I need you to stay calm and let the machine breathe for you. Can you do that? Another nod, slower this time. She adjusted his sedation drip, just enough to take the edge off the panic without knocking him out completely, and watched his breathing settle. Then she moved to the next bed. Behind her, boots echoed in the hallway. Heavy. Multiple sets. Coming fast. Emily didn't turn around. She finished checking the IV line on bed 3, made a note on the chart, and only then looked up. 5 soldiers stood in the doorway, full gear, weapons drawn but lowered. The one in front, a captain with a dust-covered face and hard eyes, scanned the room like he was clearing a building. When his gaze landed on Emily, it stopped. You, Carter? Yes. We're here to extract medical personnel. Colonel wants everyone consolidated in the West Wing until we finish sweeping the building. These patients can't be moved. Ma'am, that's not a request. Emily set down the chart. 3 of them are on ventilators. 2 have chest tubes. 1 is post-op from a below-knee amputation and still bleeding into his drains. If you move them without the right equipment and a cardiac monitor, at least 2 of them will code before you get them down the hall. So no, Captain, they can't be moved. The captain's jaw tightened. Then we secure this room and leave a guard. Fine. He nodded to one of his men, a young private who looked barely old enough to shave, and the kid took up position by the door, rifle at the ready. The captain turned back to Emily. Colonel wants to see you. I'm working. He said now. Then he can wait. The captain stared at her like she'd just told him the sky was green. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. Emily pulled off her gloves, dropped them in the bin, and walked past him into the hallway. But if he wants to talk to me, he can come here. I'm not leaving my patients. She didn't wait for a response, just kept walking, back toward the maintenance corridor where Vance and the others were still holed up. The captain followed, muttering something into his radio that she didn't bother listening to. By the time she reached the corridor, Vance had already moved the 3 patients back to the ICU, with Hayes pushing the gurneys and looking like he might pass out from stress. Emily checked each one, confirmed they were stable, and sent Hayes to get fresh IV bags from the supply room. The captain was still standing there, watching her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You're really not going to go see him, are you? Not until my shift is over. Your shift? Ends at 0700. Emily glanced at the wall clock. It was 0432. That's 2.5 hours. He can wait. The captain opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head and walked away, still muttering into his radio. Vance appeared at her elbow, voice low. Are you trying to get court-martialed? He's not going to court-martial me. How do you know? Emily didn't answer. She was already moving to the next bed. The extraction took another 40 minutes. Soldiers swept every floor, cleared every room, and dragged out 3 more bodies, All hostiles, all dead. Emily didn't ask who killed them. She didn't need to. The hospital was secure by 0515, and by 0530 the command center was back online, running off generator power and a hastily rigged satellite uplink. And at 0545, Colonel Renner walked into the ICU. He was tall, late 50s, with iron gray hair and the kind of face that didn't show emotion unless he wanted it to. He scanned the room, took in the broken windows and the bloodstains on the floor, and then his eyes found Emily. She was at the nurse's station, updating a chart. She didn't look up. "Nurse Carter." "Colonel, I'd like a word." "I'm working." He walked over, stopped on the opposite side of the desk, and waited until she set down her pen. When she finally looked at him, his expression was unreadable. "You killed 4 armed hostiles." "Yes, sir." "With a rifle you took from a locked cabinet." "Yes, sir." "And you're telling me you did this as a nurse?" Emily held his gaze. "I did it to protect my patients." "That's not what I asked." She didn't blink. "I know." The silence stretched. Somewhere in the background, a monitor beeped. A ventilator hissed. Vance was hovering near bed 4, pretending not to listen. Renner leaned forward, just slightly. "I pulled your file." "I'm sure you did. It says you're a trauma nurse, civilian credentials, no prior combat experience." "That's what it says. It's also full of holes big enough to drive a truck through." His voice dropped, not threatening, just quiet. "So I made a few calls, took some digging. Turns out Emily Carter didn't exist before 14 months ago. The name's real, but the person attached to it is new. Clean paperwork, clean background. The kind of clean that only happens when someone with clearance buries the old file and builds a new one." Emily didn't respond. "You want to tell me who you used to be?" "No, sir." "You want to tell me why you're here?" "I'm a nurse." "You're something else first." She picked up her pen. "Is there anything else, Colonel?" Renner studied her for a long moment, then straightened. "Command wants a debrief, full account. Every shot fired, every decision made. You'll report to the conference room at 800. My shift ends at 700. Then you'll have an hour to get cleaned up." "I'll be there at 8:15. I have charting to finish." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You know, most people in your position would be a little more cooperative. Most people didn't just save this building." "No," he said quietly. "They didn't." He turned and walked out. Vance appeared the second he was gone, eyes wide. "Do you have a death wish?" "No." "But then why are you poking the bear?" Emily went back to her chart. "Because the bear already knows." "Knows what?" "That I'm not afraid of him." By 700, the sun was up, painting the desert in shades of rust and gold. Emily finished her charting, handed off to the day shift nurse, a quiet woman named Marquez who didn't ask questions, and walked out of the ICU for the first time in 9 hours. Her scrubs were stained, her hair was falling out of its bun. She smelled like smoke and blood and antiseptic. She went to the locker room, stripped, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. When she got out, there was a fresh uniform waiting on the bench. Not scrubs. BD US, battle dress uniform, desert tan, no name tape, no rank. She stared at it for a long time. Then she got dressed. The conference room was on the second floor in the admin wing that had somehow survived the attack without a scratch. Emily arrived at 0815, like she'd promised, and found the room already full. Colonel Renner sat at the head of the table. Beside him, a woman in civilian clothes, late 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Across from them, 2 men in suits who had federal agent written all over them. And at the far end, alone, a man in a wheelchair. He was older, maybe 70, with white hair and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He wore a simple polo shirt and khakis, nothing military, but the way everyone in the room deferred to him said enough. Emily stepped inside and every head turned. Renner gestured to an empty chair. "Sit." She sat. The woman in the suit spoke first. "Nurse Carter, I'm Director Halston, Defense Intelligence. These are Agents Ruiz and Kim, FBI. And this," she nodded toward the man in the wheelchair, "is General Cartwright, retired." Emily looked at the general. He looked back, expression unreadable. Halston continued, "We've reviewed the security footage from last night, what we could recover anyway. We've also spoken to the soldiers who swept the building. They found 4 bodies, all killed with precision shots, all armed, all part of a coordinated assault team." Emily said nothing. "We've also reviewed your personnel file, and like Colonel Renner said, it's got more holes than explanations." Halston leaned forward. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us exactly who you are. where you trained and why you're pretending to be a nurse, and then we're going to decide what to do with you. Emily folded her hands on the table. I'm a trauma nurse. I'm certified. I'm licensed. Everything in my file is accurate. But incomplete. Yes. Why? Because I wanted a fresh start. Halston's eyes narrowed. From what? A job I couldn't do anymore. What job? Emily didn't answer. Agent Ruiz, the older of the two FBI men, cleared his throat. Ms. Carter, we can make this easy or hard. If you cooperate, we can keep this quiet. If you don't, we start pulling threads. And trust me, we're very good at pulling threads. I'm sure you are. So talk. Emily looked at him, then at Halston, then at the general, who still hadn't said a word. I'm a nurse. That's all you need to know. Halston slammed her hand on the table. 4 men are dead. This hospital was attacked by a professional team with military-grade equipment and inside knowledge of our security protocols. You expect me to believe a nurse just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills to stop them? I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm just telling you what happened. You're lying. No, I'm just not telling you everything. The general finally spoke. His voice was rough, like gravel in a blender, but quiet. Let me try. Halston sat back, jaw tight. The general wheeled himself closer to the table, eyes locked on Emily. I know who you are. She didn't flinch. Not your name, not your file, but I know the work. I know the profile. He gestured to the BDUs she was wearing. And I know you didn't learn to shoot like that in nursing school. Emily said nothing. You were forward deployed, probably attached to a special operations unit. Probably did things you can't talk about in rooms like this. And then something happened, something bad enough that you needed to disappear. So someone with pull buried your old life and gave you a new one. He paused. How am I doing so far? She met his eyes. Close enough. Why here? Because it's quiet. You don't strike me as someone who likes quiet. I didn't say I liked it. I said I needed it. The general nodded slowly. And last night? Last night, quiet ended. He smiled. It wasn't warm. Yeah, it did. Halston cut in, voice hard. General, with all due respect, this isn't story time. We need answers, real ones. You won't get them, the general said, still looking at Emily. Not from her, not unless she decides to give them. And she won't, because people like her don't break. They just go somewhere else in their head and wait you out. Then what do you suggest? I suggest you stop wasting time trying to crack her and start asking the right questions. He turned to Halston. Who sent those men? How did they get inside? And why the hell were they targeting a military hospital in the middle of nowhere? Halston's expression shifted. We're working on it. Work faster. The general wheeled back from the table. Because if they hit us once, they'll hit us again. And next time, you might not have someone like her standing in the way. He left without another word. The room was silent. Halston stared at Emily, frustration radiating off her like heat. You're dismissed, but don't leave the compound. We're not done with you. Emily stood. Yes, ma'am. She walked out, and the moment the door closed behind her, she heard Halston's voice, muffled but clear. I want everything on her. I don't care how deep you have to dig. Emily kept walking. She made it halfway down the hall before someone called her name. Carter, wait. She turned. It was Renner, walking fast, catching up. He stopped a few feet away, hands on his hips, looking like he was trying to decide whether to yell or laugh. You've got guts, I'll give you that. Thank you, sir. That wasn't a compliment. He ran a hand through his hair. You just told a DIA director and 2 federal agents to go screw themselves. You realize that, right? I answered their questions. You stonewalled them. I told them what they needed to know. Which was nothing. Emily didn't argue. Renner sighed. Look, I don't know what you did before you got here, and honestly, I don't care. But those people in that room, they do, and they're not going to stop digging until they find something. So if you've got skeletons, now's the time to come clean. I don't have skeletons. I have boundaries. Boundaries won't protect you from them. Then I guess we'll see. He stared at her, then shook his head. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Maybe both. Yeah. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, you saved a lot of lives last night, more than you know. So, thank you. Emily nodded. Just doing my job, sir. Right. He walked away, muttering under his breath. She watched him go, then turned and headed back toward the ICU. But she didn't make it. Halfway down the corridor, her radio crackled. All personnel, this is command. We have a situation. Repeat. We have a situation. Unidentified vehicle approaching the west gate. Armed occupants. All security teams respond. Emily's hand went to her hip, where the rifle should have been. But it wasn't. She'd left it in the ICU. She ran. By the time she reached the west gate, the vehicle was already stopped. It was a black SUV, windows tinted, engine still running. Soldiers surrounded it, weapons raised, shouting commands that no one inside seemed to hear. Emily pushed through the crowd, ignoring the protests, and got close enough to see the driver's side window roll down. A man leaned out, middle-aged, calm, smiling. "I'm here to see Emily Carter," he said. Every gun in the area swung toward her. The man's smile widened. "Hello, Evelyn." Her real name hit like a punch, and somewhere behind her, she heard Halston's voice, sharp and furious. "Get her in cuffs, now." Emily didn't move. She stood perfectly still while soldiers closed in from 3 directions, boots crunching on gravel, weapons trained on her like she'd just become the primary threat. Her hands stayed at her sides. Her breathing stayed even, but her mind was already calculating exits, angles, distance to cover. The man in the SUV was still smiling. Halston's voice cut through the chaos, sharp enough to draw blood. "I said cuffs, now." A young sergeant stepped forward, flex cuffs in hand, and reached for Emily's wrist. She didn't resist, just turned slightly, met his eyes, and said quietly, "You don't want to do that." He hesitated. "Do it anyway," Halston snapped, pushing through the crowd. She stopped 5 feet from Emily, face flushed, eyes blazing. "You lied to us. You lied to everyone, and now some stranger rolls up to a secure military installation asking for you by a name that doesn't exist in any file we have. So yeah, Nurse Carter, we'll say or whoever the hell you are, you're going in cuffs until we figure out what's going on." Emily looked past her, straight at the man in the SUV. He was still leaning out the window, utterly relaxed, like this was all theater he'd seen before. She didn't recognize his face, but she recognized the type. Contractor, ex-agency. The kind of person who showed up when governments needed things done that couldn't be written down. "Who are you?" she asked. He tilted his head. "Does it matter?" "Yes." "Then let's talk. Just you and me. No audience." Halston laughed, bitter and sharp. "Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere near her." The man's smile didn't change. "I'm not here to hurt her, Director. I'm here to help." "Help with what?" "With the same people who attacked this hospital last night." The words landed like a grenade. Halston's expression shifted, not to belief, but to suspicion. "What do you know about that?" "More than you." He nodded toward Emily. "And so does she, which is why you should probably let her go." "Not a chance." "Then you'll lose more people. Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Definitely soon." He leaned back into the car, and the window started to roll up. "Your call, Director." "Wait." Halston stepped forward, but the SUV was already reversing, smooth and controlled, back toward the gate. She spun toward the soldiers. "Stop that vehicle. I want the driver detained for questioning." But the SUV was faster. It cleared the gate before anyone could react, turned onto the service road, and disappeared into the desert haze. Halston turned back to Emily, jaw tight. "Start talking." Emily met her gaze. "I don't know who that was." "Bullshit. I don't. But I know why he's here." "Then explain." Emily glanced at the soldiers still surrounding her, rifles half raised, uncertain. She looked back at Halston. "Not here. Not in front of them. If you want the truth, it's just you, me, and whoever's clearance is high enough to hear it. You don't get to make demands." "I'm not making demands. I'm giving you a choice. You can lock me up and waste time, or you can listen and maybe save lives." Emily's voice dropped, just enough to cut through the anger. "Your call, Director." For a moment, Halston looked like she might actually swing. Then she exhaled through her teeth and jerked her head toward the admin building. "Conference room, 5 minutes. If you're lying to me again, I'll bury you so deep you'll never see daylight." Emily said nothing. She just walked. The conference room was smaller this time. No federal agents, no general. Just Halston, Colonel Renner, and a man Emily didn't recognize. Thin, balding, wearing a polo shirt with a DoD contractor lanyard. He sat in the corner with a laptop, fingers moving across the keyboard like he was already digging into something. Halston slammed the door. "Talk." Emily stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. "The man in the SUV called me Evelyn. That's not my real name. It's an operational alias. I used it during a deployment 6 years ago." "Deployment where?" Libya, then Syria, then Iraq. Black operations. No unit designation, no official record. Renner leaned forward. Who did you work for? Whoever paid for the contract. You were a mercenary? No, I was military, but the unit I was attached to operated outside normal command structures. We did things that couldn't be tied back to the DoD. High-value targets, asset retrieval, wet work when necessary. Halston's eyes narrowed. And your real name? Emily Carter. I legally changed it after I left, sealed the records, started over. Why? Because I got tired of killing people. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel. The contractor in the corner stopped typing. How many confirmed? Emily looked at him. 37. He let out a low whistle. Jesus. No, Emily said flatly. Just me. Halston walked to the window, stared out at the compound. So you buried your past, became a nurse, and thought no one would ever find you. I thought I had enough distance. I was wrong. Why did that man call you Evelyn? Because whoever sent him knows my history, and if they know that, they know what I can do. Renner cut in. Which is what, exactly? Emily turned to him. Find people who don't want to be found. Kill them without leaving evidence. Disappear before anyone knows I was there. And you think last night's attack was connected to you? No, I think last night's attack was a message, and that man showing up today was the follow-up. Halston spun around. A message from who? I don't know yet, but I will. How? Emily pulled out the radio she'd taken from one of the dead hostiles. She set it on the table. Because they left this behind, and I'm guessing your tech team hasn't cracked the encryption yet. The contractor sat up. You have one of their radios? Had it since 0400. Figured you'd want it. Halston stared at her, then at the radio, then back. You've been sitting on evidence for 8 hours? I've been keeping my patients alive for 8 hours. Now I'm giving it to you. The contractor grabbed the radio, popped the casing, and started pulling components. This is custom work. Military-grade encryption, but the firmware's been modified. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. Can you crack it? Halston asked. Give me an hour. You've got 30 minutes. He didn't argue, just kept working. Halston turned back to Emily. If you're lying to me, if any of this is a setup, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cell so dark you forget what the sun looks like. Emily didn't blink. I'm not lying. Then prove it. Help us catch whoever did this. I already did. I killed 4 of them. That's not enough. It's all I've got right now. Halston stepped closer, voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. No. You've got training. You've got experience. And whether you like it or not, you're back in the game. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to work with us. You're going to use whatever skills you have to help us track these people down. And when we find them, you're going to help us end this. Emily held her gaze. And if I say no, then I arrest you for obstruction, falsifying federal documents, and anything else I can think of. Your choice. Emily looked at Renner. He said nothing, just watched. She looked at the contractor, still pulling apart the radio. Then she looked back at Halston. I want full operational autonomy. No oversight. No questions about how I get results. Absolutely not. Then we're done here. Halston's jaw worked. You don't get to dictate terms. I'm not dictating. I'm negotiating. You want my help? You give me room to work. Otherwise, you're just another bureaucrat slowing me down. Renner spoke up, voice quiet. She's right. Halston turned to him. Excuse me? If she's as good as she says, tying her hands won't help anyone. Let her operate, but... He looked at Emily. You report directly to me. Every move, every decision. And if you go off the reservation, I pull you back. Hard. Emily considered it. Deal. Halston looked like she wanted to argue, but Renner cut her off. This is my base, Director. My people. My call. She exhaled sharply. Fine. But the second this goes sideways, it's on both of you. The contractor looked up from the radio. Got something. Everyone turned. He spun the laptop around. On the screen was a decrypted message log, timestamps running from 3 days ago to this morning. Most of it was coded, but a few lines were clear enough. Phase 1 complete. Hospital secured. Extraction team standing by. Target package confirmed. Proceed to Phase 2. Evelyn Carter is active. Adjust protocol. Emily's blood went cold. Halston leaned over the screen. They knew you were here. Not just here, Emily said quietly. They knew I'd respond. Why? Because that's what I do, and whoever planned this knew exactly how to bait me. Renner frowned. What's Phase 2? The contractor scrolled down. Doesn't say. But there's a timestamp. Tonight, 2200 hours. Where? Coordinates. He pulled up a map. A red dot appeared, 60 miles northwest of the base. Middle of the desert. Nothing around it for miles. Emily stared at the screen. That's a kill zone. Or a meeting point, Halston said. Same thing. Renner stood. We send a team, full tactical. Lock it down before they get there. Emily shook her head. They'll see you coming. This is a trap, and they're expecting a military response. Send soldiers, and they'll scatter. Or worse, they'll detonate whatever they have planted and disappear. Then what do you suggest? She looked at him. Send me. Alone? Yes. That's insane. That's the job. Halston cut in. Absolutely not. We're not sending one person into a potential ambush with zero backup. Then send backup, but keep them far enough out that they don't spook the targets. Emily tapped the screen. I go in first, scout the area, identify the players. If it's a trap, I pull back and your team moves in. If it's a meeting, I gather intel and we hit them when they're exposed. Renner studied her. And if something goes wrong, then I handle it. How? The same way I handled last night. He didn't look convinced, but he also didn't say no. Halston crossed her arms. This is a bad idea. Probably, Emily said, but it's the best one we've got. The room went quiet. Finally, Renner nodded. You've got until 2100 to prep. I'll have a team on standby, 2 clicks out. You go dark, we move in. Understood? Understood. Halston looked like she wanted to scream. If this blows up, it's on you, Colonel. I know. Emily turned to leave. Renner called after her. Carter? She stopped. Don't get yourself killed. I don't want to explain that to your patients. She almost smiled. I'll try. The hours between 1000 and 1800 blurred together. Emily spent the first hour in the armory, moving through racks of equipment with the kind of focus that came from years of muscle memory. She pulled gear that felt right. Not the heavy tactical rigs the soldiers wore, but something lighter, faster. A plate carrier with minimal coverage. A suppressed M4 with a reflex sight and backup iron sights. 2 spare magazines taped together, inverted, for faster reloads. A sidearm, Glock 19, suppressed, with 3 mags. A combat knife strapped to her calf. A med kit. Tourniquets. Compression bandages. Hemostatic gauze. And a radio with encrypted comms. She loaded everything into a pack, checked the weight, adjusted the straps until the distribution felt even. Then she field stripped the M4, checked every component, reassembled it, and cycled the action 3 times. Smooth, no catches. Behind her, footsteps. She turned. It was Vance. The charge nurse stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. I heard what you're doing. Emily went back to her gear. Yeah? You're insane. So I've been told. Vance stepped closer, watched Emily load magazines with the kind of precision that didn't come from weekend shooting ranges. Why are you doing this? Because no one else can. That's not an answer. Emily stopped, looked at her. Yes, it is. Vance studied her for a long moment, then she sighed. I've been a nurse for 12 years. I've seen a lot of people come through this job. Some of them are here because they care. Some are here because they didn't have better options. But you... She shook her head. You're here because you're trying to be someone else. Emily didn't argue. I don't know who you were before, Vance continued. And honestly, I don't care. But I know you saved lives last night, mine included. So whatever happens out there tonight, just come back, okay? Emily zipped up the pack. I'll try. That's not a promise. It's the best I can do. Vance nodded slowly, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small LED pen light. Take this. Your patients are going to need you when you get back. Emily took it, clipped it to her vest. Thanks. Don't die out there, Carter. Noted. Vance left. Emily finished prepping in silence, then spent another hour reviewing satellite imagery of the target zone. The contractor had pulled everything available. Topographic maps, thermal scans from yesterday, even old recon photos from a training exercise 2 years ago. The outcrop was isolated, surrounded by flat desert for miles in every direction. No cover, no concealment, just open ground and killing fields. She memorized the approach routes, identified 3 potential rally points, and marked 2 exfil corridors in case things went bad. Then she sat back and closed her eyes, running through the scenarios in her head. Ambush. Meeting. Trap within a trap. She'd seen all of them before. At 1600, Hayes found her in the mess hall, staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. You good? He asked, sitting down across from her. Fine. You don't look fine. Emily glanced at him. What do you want, Hayes? He hesitated, then leaned forward. I just wanted to say, I get it now. Last night, the way you moved, the way you didn't hesitate. I thought you were just, I don't know, lucky. But you weren't. You knew exactly what you were doing. Yeah. So what happens if you don't come back? Then Vance runs the ICU, Marquez takes over third shift, and you stop asking stupid questions. He blinked. That's it? What else do you want me to say? I don't know. Something human? Emily picked up the coffee, took a sip. It was cold. I'm as human as anyone else, Hayes. I just don't have the luxury of pretending otherwise. He stared at her, then stood up. Good luck out there. Thanks. He left. Emily sat alone for another 10 minutes, then dumped the coffee and headed back to her quarters. At 1800, she changed into desert fatigues. No name tape, no rank, no unit patch. Just plain tan. She strapped on the plate carrier, checked the fit, adjusted the shoulder straps, clipped the radio to her belt, secured the knife to her calf, slung the M4 across her chest, checked her watch. 2 hours until insertion. She walked to the motor pool, found the Humvee Renner had assigned her, and did a full pre-flight. Tires, fluids, lights, comms, everything functional. She loaded her gear into the back, then climbed into the driver's seat and sat there, hands on the wheel, staring out at the compound. Somewhere behind her, Renner's voice. You ready? She looked in the rearview mirror. He was standing 10 feet back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. As I'll ever be. He walked up to the window. I've got a drone overhead and a QRF on standby. If things go sideways, you call it in and we come running. Understood. Carter. His voice dropped. I'm trusting you. Don't make me regret it. She met his eyes. I won't. He nodded, stepped back, and she started the engine. By 2000, she was 20 miles out, driving northwest into the desert with no lights and no escort. The sun had set, and the sky was a deep bruise of purple and black, stars just starting to pierce through. The desert stretched out in every direction, flat and empty, broken only by the occasional cluster of rocks or the skeletal remains of a long-dead Joshua tree. The radio crackled. Carter, this is Overwatch. We have you on thermal. You're 15 clicks out from the target zone. How copy? She keyed the mic. Copy. Any movement? Negative. Zone is cold. No heat signatures. No vehicles. Understood. Going silent in 10. Roger. We'll be watching. She clicked off the radio and kept driving, slower now, scanning the horizon. The terrain was getting rougher, more rocks, more elevation changes. She checked the GPS. 12 clicks out. At 2030, she stopped the Humvee 5 clicks from the target and continued on foot. The temperature had dropped into the 50s and the desert was quiet, except for the wind and the crunch of sand under her boots. She moved slow, rifle at low ready, scanning left and right every few steps. No thermal scope. She was relying on night vision and her own eyes. At 2100, she was 2 clicks out. She dropped to a knee behind a cluster of boulders and glassed the target zone with a small pair of binos. The outcrop was visible now, a dark shape against the lighter desert floor, maybe 20 feet high. No lights. No movement. But something felt wrong. She keyed her radio, kept her voice barely above a whisper. Overwatch, I'm in position. Confirming target zone is cold. Affirm. Drone shows no thermal activity within 500 meters of your location. Copy. She clicked off and kept watching. At 2130, she saw the tire tracks. Fresh. Leading from the east straight toward the outcrop. She followed them with her eyes, counted the impressions. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. Heavy. Recent, within the last 6 hours. She moved. The outcrop was hollow, not natural, dug out decades ago, probably during some long-forgotten military exercise, then reinforced with timber and corrugated metal. A bunker. She circled it slowly, staying low, scanning for tripwires or sensors. Nothing visible. The entrance was on the south side, a steel door set into the rock, half buried by sand. She tested the handle, locked. Then she heard it. Voices. Muffled. Coming from below. She pressed her ear to the door. 2 men. Maybe 3. Speaking English, but the rhythm was off. Eastern European, Russian, maybe Ukrainian. One of them laughed. She'll come. She always does. And if she doesn't, then we blow the hospital anyway. Either way, we win. Emily's hand went to her sidearm. She stepped back, raised the Glock, and fired 3 suppressed rounds into the lock mechanism. The steel buckled. She kicked the door open and went in fast, weapon up, moving with the kind of speed that came from doing this 100 times before. The room was small, maybe 12 by 12. Concrete floor, bare walls, a folding table in the center with a laptop, a radio, and what looked like a detonator. And 3 men, all reaching for weapons. She dropped the first one with 2 shots to the chest before he cleared his holster. The second got his AK halfway up before she put a round through his shoulder and another through his knee. He went down screaming, clutching his leg. The third dove behind the table. Emily moved left, flanking, keeping her sight picture clear. She saw his shadow against the wall, adjusted her angle, and fired. The round punched through the edge of the table and caught him in the thigh. He fell, cursing in Russian, clutching the wound. She kicked his rifle away, then turned to the one on the floor, still screaming. "Who sent you?" He spat blood at her. "Go to hell." She shot him in the other knee. The scream turned into a wail. "Who sent you? You're dead. You're already dead. They're coming for you." She pressed the muzzle to his forehead. "Last chance." He looked up at her, eyes wild, and started laughing through the pain. "You don't get it, do you? This was never about the hospital. It was about you, flushing you out, proving you're still operational." He coughed, blood spraying from his lips. "And now they know exactly where you are, exactly what you'll do." Behind her, the laptop beeped. She spun. On the screen, a single line of text appeared, white on black. "Hello, Evelyn. Welcome home." Then the screen went black, and from somewhere in the distance, she heard rotors, multiple, heavy, coming fast. She keyed her radio. "Overwatch. I've got inbound aircraft. Multiple contacts. Need QRF now." Static. She tried again. "Overwatch. Do you copy?" Nothing. She looked at the radio on the table. It was transmitting. A jammer. They'd cut her comms the second she walked in. She grabbed the laptop, yanked the cables free, and shoved it into her pack. Then she turned to the man on the floor. "How many?" He just laughed. She left him there and ran. Outside, the rotors were louder. She counted 3 distinct signatures, Blackhawks, maybe Russian hips. Hard to tell. She sprinted towards the rocks where she'd left her observation post, dropped to a knee, and scanned the sky. Lights. Running lights. Coming from the north. ETA. Maybe 2 minutes. She pulled out a small IR strobe, activated it, and clipped it to her vest. If the QRF was out there, they'd see it. If not, she was about to have a very bad night. The helicopters banked east, searchlights cutting through the darkness. They weren't heading for the outcrop. They were heading for her last known position, the Humvee. She swore under her breath and started moving south, away from the target zone, away from the vehicles. No comms, no backup, just her and 5 clicks of open desert between her and anything resembling cover. Then the first spotlight found her. She dove behind a boulder as rounds started chewing up the sand around her. 7.62, probably PKM. Sustained fire. She flattened herself against the rock, breathing hard, and keyed the dead radio out of habit. Nothing. The helicopter circled, searchlight sweeping back and forth. She waited for the beam to pass, then broke cover and sprinted 20 meters to the next cluster of rocks. More fire. Closer this time. Dust and fragments kicked up around her boots. She dropped, rolled, came up behind cover, and returned fire. 3 controlled bursts. The helicopter banked hard, spotlight swinging away. She didn't wait. Ran again. This time, the second helicopter found her. Rockets. The first one hit 50 meters to her left, the concussion wave lifting her off her feet and slamming her into the ground. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. She tasted blood. But she was moving before her brain caught up, crawling forward, dragging herself toward a depression in the sand. The second rocket missed by less. She made it to the depression, barely 3 feet deep, not nearly enough, and pressed herself flat. Above her, the helicopters were coordinating now, one on each flank, boxing her in. Professional. Efficient. This wasn't random. This was an execution. She pulled a fragmentation grenade from her vest, yanked the pin, and threw it blind toward the nearest helicopter's spotlight. It detonated mid-air, shrapnel pinging off the fuselage. The spotlight went dark. 1 down. The second helicopter adjusted, moving in for the kill. And then, from the south, she heard it. Gunfire. American. M240s. The QRF. The helicopter banked hard, spotlight swinging toward the new threat. Emily didn't wait. She got up and ran. Legs burning, lungs screaming, every step a gamble. Behind her, the helicopters were engaging the QRF now, tracers lighting up the night like fireworks. She made it another 100 meters before her legs gave out. She dropped to her knees, gasping, and looked back. The helicopters were retreating, breaking off, disappearing into the darkness. The QRF was advancing, Humvees rolling in fast, soldiers dismounting, setting up a perimeter. She tried to stand. Couldn't. Her vision swam. Then someone was beside her. Renner. He pulled her to her feet, half carried her toward the nearest vehicle. "I've got you. Stay with me." She tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Everything went black. When she woke up, she was in the ICU. Her ICU. Bed 4. An IV in her arm. A monitor beeping steadily beside her. Vance was standing at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, looking equal parts relieved and furious. "You're awake." Emily's throat was dry. "How long?" 6 hours. You've got a concussion, 3 cracked ribs, and enough bruises to make you look like a walking abstract painting. But you're alive. The laptop? Renner has it. Tech team's already pulling data. Emily closed her eyes. Good. Good? Vance's voice rose. "You almost died out there, and all you can say is good?" "I got what we needed." "You got lucky." Emily opened her eyes, met Vance's gaze. "No, I got the job done." Vance stared at her, then shook her head. "You're impossible." "I know." Before Vance could respond, the door opened. Renner stepped in, followed by Halston and the contractor. Renner stopped at the bedside. "You look like hell." "Feel worse." "Good. Maybe you'll think twice next time." He pulled up a chair, sat down. "We pulled the data from the laptop. You were right. This was a setup. The whole thing. The attack on the hospital, the meeting point, everything. They were testing you." "Testing for what?" Halston answered. "To see if you'd come out of retirement, to confirm you're still operational. And now that they know you are, they're going to come after you. Hard." Emily's jaw tightened. "Who are they?" The contractor spoke up. "That's the problem. We don't know. The data's encrypted 6 ways from Sunday. We've got fragments, names, locations, financial transfers, but nothing concrete. Whoever's running this operation is well-funded, well-connected, and very, very careful." "Then we dig deeper." Halston leaned against the wall. "We are. But in the meantime, you're a target. And as long as you're here, this base is a target. So we're moving you." "Where?" "Classified. Safe house, off the grid. You'll be there until we can neutralize the threat." Emily shook her head. "I'm not hiding. You don't have a choice." "Yes, I do. I'm staying here, with my patients." Renner cut in. "Carter, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You need me here. Because if they come back, and they will, I'm the only one who can stop them." The room went silent. Finally, Halston exhaled. "You're insane." "Probably, but I'm also right." Renner looked at Halston. She looked back. Some unspoken conversation passed between them. Then Renner nodded. "Fine. You stay, but we double security. Armed guards on every floor, patrols every hour. And you don't leave this building without an escort. Agreed?" "Agreed." Halston pushed off the wall. "This is a mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make." She left without another word. Renner stood, squeezed Emily's shoulder. "Get some rest. You're going to need it." He walked out, leaving Emily alone with Vance. The charge nurse stared at her for a long moment. "You really think they're coming back, don't you?" Emily looked at the ceiling. "I know they are." "How?" "Because I would." Vance shook her head, walked to the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're staying." "Why?" "Because if something happens, I'd rather have you here than anyone else." She left. Emily closed her eyes and listened to the monitor beep. Somewhere outside, in the darkness beyond the compound, rotors echoed in the distance. And Emily knew. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The rotors faded into silence, but Emily didn't move. She lay in bed 4, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the cracks she'd memorized over 11 months of night shifts. 43. The same 43 she'd counted while trying to forget who she used to be. That was done now. The door opened. Not Vance. Not Renner. The contractor from the conference room, still nameless, still wearing that DOD lanyard like it meant something. He pulled up a chair, set his laptop on the bedside table, and didn't bother with small talk. "We cracked the rest of the encryption." Emily turned her head. "And? You're not going to like it." "I already don't like it. Tell me anyway." He opened the laptop, angled the screen toward her. Financial records, transaction logs, dates going back 18 months, wire transfers from shell companies in Cyprus, the Caymans, Dubai. Millions moving through accounts that didn't exist on paper. And at the bottom of the screen, a name. Christoph Volkov. Emily's breath caught, just for a second, but the contractor saw it. You know him. It wasn't a question. She closed her eyes. Yeah. From where? Mosul, 2019. He was running a black market weapons pipeline out of the old industrial district. My unit was tasked with shutting it down. Did you? We killed everyone in the building, 14 men. Volkov wasn't there. The contractor's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up another file. A photo. Grainy, low-res, pulled from some surveillance feed. A man in his 50s, lean and hard, with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. Standing in front of a warehouse, arms crossed, watching something burn. That's him, Emily said. He's been off the grid since 2020. No confirmed sightings, no financial activity. We thought he was dead. Apparently not. Apparently, he's been planning this for years. The contractor scrolled through more files. The attack on the hospital wasn't random. It was bait. He knew you were here, knew you'd respond, knew exactly how to draw you out. Emily's jaw tightened. How did he know I was here? Bull? That's the question. He pulled up another document. We traced the initial intel breach to an internal source. Someone on this base fed him your location, your schedule, your alias. Who? We don't know yet, but we're close. Emily sat up, wincing as her ribs protested. How close? Close enough that I'm telling you to watch your back. Whoever it is, they're still here, still feeding him information. She swung her legs off the bed, pulled the IV out of her arm with a quick yank that made the monitor alarm. The contractor reached for the call button, but she grabbed his wrist. Don't. You need medical. I need to find the leak before Volkov uses it to kill more people. She stood, swayed slightly, then steadied herself. Where's Renner? Command center. But Carter, you're in no condition. She was already walking. The command center was a controlled storm. Screens everywhere, satellite feeds, radio chatter, soldiers moving between stations with the kind of focused urgency that came from knowing the threat wasn't theoretical anymore. Renner stood at the center of it all, arms crossed, staring at a map of the compound with red circles marking weak points. He saw Emily, and his expression darkened. You're supposed to be in bed. I'm supposed to be hunting whoever sold me out. We're handling it. Not fast enough. She walked to the main screen, scanned the data. The contractor said you traced the breach to an internal source. Show me. Renner hesitated, then nodded to a tech sergeant. The screen changed. Access logs. Time-stamped entries showing who accessed the personnel database over the last 3 months. Most were routine, admin, medical, command staff. But one set of entries stood out. Same user ID. Same pattern. Always late at night. Always accessing files they had no business touching. Emily read the ID aloud. Sierra 7-2. The room went quiet. Renner's voice was tight. That's Major Kellerman, second in command, security liaison. Where is he now? Off base, personal leave. He left yesterday morning. Emily turned to face him. Before or after the attack? Before. 12 hours before. That's not a coincidence. I know. Renner pulled out his phone, dialed a number, waited. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. He's not picking up. Because he's running. Emily walked to the map, studied the routes leading away from the base. How much of a head start does he have? 36 hours, give or take. Then he's already across the border. Mexico, probably. From there, anywhere. She tapped the map. But if Volkov's still operational, Kellerman's still useful, which means they're not done. Halston's voice cut through from the doorway. Which means we find Kellerman and make him talk. Emily turned. The DIA director looked like she hadn't slept, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. We've got feelers out, Halston continued. Border Patrol, TSA, international partners. If Kellerman surfaces, we'll know. He won't surface, Emily said. Not if Volkov's protecting him. Then we find Volkov. You won't, not before he makes his next move. Halston stepped closer. And what do you think that move is? Emily looked at the map, at the compound, at the 100 vulnerabilities she could see from where she was standing. He's not done with me, and he's not done with this base. Whatever he's planning, it's bigger than the first attack. Based on what? Based on the fact that he went to this much trouble to confirm I'm still alive. That's not revenge, that's preparation. Renner cut in. Preparation for what? For eliminating the one person who knows how he operates. Emily met his eyes. Me. The room went silent. Then the alarms went off. Not the compound alarms. The fire alarms. Loud, piercing, echoing through every corridor. Renner grabbed the nearest radio. All stations, report. What the hell is going on? Static, then a voice, panicked. We've got smoke in the west wing. Multiple floors, source unknown. Evacuate. Now. Emily was already moving. She grabbed an M4 from the rack near the door, checked the magazine, and headed for the stairs. Renner called after her. Carter, wait. No time. She took the stairs 3 at a time, ribs screaming, legs still shaky from the concussion. The west wing was chaos. Nurses herding patients toward the exits, orderlies carrying equipment, soldiers shouting orders that no one was following. Smoke was pouring from the second floor, thick and black, acrid enough to sting her eyes. She found Vance near the stairwell, coughing, trying to guide an elderly patient in a wheelchair. Where's it coming from? Emily shouted over the alarms. Storage room, second floor, something chemical. It's spreading fast. Emily handed her the rifle. Get everyone out. I'll find the source. You can't go up there. Just do it. She didn't wait for an answer, pulled her shirt up over her nose and mouth, and pushed through the smoke toward the second floor. The heat hit her first, then the smell, burning plastic and something else. Something wrong. She moved down the corridor, checking doors until she found it. Storage room 2B. Door open. Flames visible inside, licking up the walls. And in the center of the room, a device, crude but effective. A fuel canister, a timer, and an ignition source. Military-grade accelerant. Emily grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, aimed, and sprayed. The flames hissed, fought back, then died. She kicked the device apart, checked the timer. It was still counting down. 45 seconds. She grabbed the canister, felt the weight, still full. Enough accelerant to take out half the floor. She carried it to the window, smashed the glass with the butt of the extinguisher, and threw it out into the empty courtyard below. It hit the pavement and ruptured, liquid spreading but not igniting. 30 seconds. She turned back to the device, found the detonator, and ripped the wires free. The timer stopped. She stood there, breathing hard, smoke still swirling around her, and keyed her radio. Renner. Threat neutralized. Second floor storage. Send a bomb tech. His voice came back tight. Copy. You okay? Define okay. Still breathing? Barely. Good enough. Get out of there. She did. By the time she made it back to the first floor, the fire department was on scene, soldiers were sweeping the building, and Vance was standing in the parking lot with a patient roster, checking names. Emily walked over. Everyone out? Yeah, no casualties. Vance looked at her. You're covered in soot. I know. And you're bleeding again. Emily glanced down. The IV site on her arm had reopened, blood trickling down to her wrist. She wiped it on her pants. I'll live. That's not the point. It's the only point that matters. Before Vance could argue, Renner appeared, flanked by 2 MPs and the bomb tech. The tech was young, maybe 25, carrying a kit that looked like it weighed more than he did. Renner gestured toward the building. Carter says second floor, storage 2B. Device is disarmed, but I want it cleared before anyone goes back in. The tech nodded and headed inside. Renner turned to Emily. You want to tell me how you knew it was a bomb and not just a fire? Because fires don't have timers. You saw the timer before you went in? No, I guessed. You guessed. Yeah. He stared at her, then shook his head. You're either the luckiest person I've ever met or the most reckless. I've heard that before. I bet you have. He pulled her aside, lowered his voice. This wasn't random. Someone planted that device, someone who knows the building, who knows our protocols. Kellerman. He's gone. Then he had help. Someone still here. Renner's jaw tightened. We're running background checks on everyone, full vetting. If there's another mole, we'll find them. You better, because Volkov's not going to stop. Emily looked back at the building, at the smoke still drifting from the broken window. This was a distraction, a test. He's probing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. Then we shore them up. It won't be enough. Why not? Because he's not coming from the outside, he's already inside. The words hung there. Renner's radio crackled. Colonel, this is Gate 2. We've got a visitor. Says he has information about the attack. Civilian. No ID. Says he'll only talk to Nurse Carter. Emily and Renner looked at each other. Describe him, Renner said into the radio. Male, 50s, scar on his face, left eye to jaw. Emily's blood turned to ice. Renner keyed the mic. Detain him. Do not let him leave. Copy. Renner turned to Emily. That's Volkov. Yeah. Why would he just walk up to the gate? Because he wants me to know he can. Emily started walking toward the gate. And because he's about to make me an offer. What kind of offer? The kind where people die either way. Gate 2 was on the northwest corner of the compound, manned by 4 soldiers with itchy trigger fingers and the kind of paranoia that came from knowing they'd been attacked 12 hours ago. Volkov stood 20 feet outside the barrier, hands visible, no weapons, just standing there like he was waiting for a bus. Emily approached slowly, rifle slung but within reach. Renner was beside her, sidearm drawn. Halston had materialized from somewhere, flanked by 2 federal agents with expressions that said they'd love an excuse to shoot someone. Volkov smiled when he saw Emily. Evelyn, you look terrible. Christoph, you look alive. I'm disappointed. His smile widened. I've missed this, the banter, the threats. You were always my favorite. I wasn't your favorite. I was the one who killed your operation. Details. He spread his hands. I'm here to talk. Then talk. Not here. Too many witnesses. Too many guns pointed at my head. He nodded toward the compound. Inside, just you and me. No weapons. No backup. Halston stepped forward. Absolutely not. Volkov ignored her. You want to know who helped me? Who gave me access to your schedules, your security, your personnel files? I'll tell you. But only her, and only alone. Emily studied him. Why? Because you're the only one who'll understand. Understand what? That this isn't about revenge. It's about leverage. And right now, I have it. You don't. Renner moved closer to Emily. Don't do this. He's not going to tell anyone else. Then we make him. You can't. And we both know it. She looked at Volkov. One condition. We talk in the open. Compound grounds. Visible to your people. He considered it. Acceptable. And if I think you're lying, I walk away and let them arrest you. Fair. Halston grabbed Emily's arm. This is insane. He could be wired. He could have a dead man's switch. He could have answers. Emily pulled free. And we're running out of time. She walked through the gate. Volkov fell into step beside her, hands still visible, moving like he didn't have a care in the world. They walked toward the center of the compound where the parade ground sat empty under the late morning sun. Soldiers watched from every angle, rifles trained, waiting for an excuse. Volkov stopped in the middle of the square. This good? It'll do. Start talking. Right to business. I always liked that about you. He clasped his hands behind his back. Kellerman was easy. Gambling debts, bad investments, the usual weaknesses. I offered him money. He offered me access. And the attack? A message to you to prove I could reach you anywhere. Why? Because 6 years ago, you destroyed something I spent a decade building. You killed my people. You burned my assets. You left me with nothing. His voice didn't rise, didn't crack, just stayed cold. And then you disappeared, changed your name, became a nurse, like you could just walk away from what you did. I did walk away. No, you ran, and I've been waiting for you to surface ever since. Emily's hand moved toward her sidearm. So what now? You kill me? You've already tried twice. I don't want to kill you, Evelyn. I want to break you, the way you broke me. He smiled. And I'm going to start by taking away the one thing you care about. Which is? Your patience. The world tilted. Emily's voice came out flat. Explain. There are 15 people in your ICU right now, critically injured, dependent on machines to keep them breathing, and in exactly... He checked his watch. 12 minutes, those machines are going to fail, all of them, at once. You're lying. Am I? He pulled a phone from his pocket, held it up so she could see the screen. A timer, counting down. Kellerman installed a failsafe in the hospital's backup power grid before he left. One signal, and everything shuts down. Ventilators, monitors, IV pumps, everything. Emily's blood roared in her ears. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm giving you a choice. You can stay here and arrest me. Let your people drag me away and watch 15 patients die while you're filling out paperwork. Or, he pocketed the phone. You can let me walk away, right now, and I'll cancel the shutdown. That's not a choice. It's the only one you're going to get. Emily looked back at the gate. Renner was watching, along with Halston, the agents, a dozen soldiers, all waiting for her signal. She could give it right now. They'd swarm Volkov, take him down, secure the phone. But if he was telling the truth, they wouldn't get the abort code in time, and 15 people would die. She turned back to Volkov. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't. But you know me, Evelyn. I'm a lot of things. I'm not a liar. You're a arms dealer and a killer. Exactly. Which means when I make a deal, I honor it. So what's it going to be? Emily's hand hovered over her sidearm. Every instinct screamed at her to draw, to end this, to put a round between his eyes and let the consequences sort themselves out. But she couldn't. Not if it meant losing them. She stepped back. Walk. Volkov's smile returned. Smart choice. He pulled out the phone, tapped the screen. The timer stopped. Then he pocketed it and started walking toward the gate. Emily watched him go. Watched the soldiers part. Watched Halston's face turn red. Watched Renner's hand drop to his sidearm, waiting for the order that didn't come. Volkov reached the gate, turned back one last time. This isn't over, Evelyn. Not by a long shot. I'll be in touch. Then he was gone. Halston stormed over, furious. What the hell did you just do? Emily didn't answer. She was already running toward the hospital. She burst through the ICU doors, breathing hard, and scanned the room. Vance was at the nurse's station, looking confused. The monitors were beeping normally. The ventilators were running. Everything was stable. Emily checked the backup power panel. Green lights across the board. Vance walked over. What's going on? Check every machine. Every patient. Full diagnostic. Now. Why? Just do it. Vance didn't argue. She grabbed Hayes and Marquez and they started running checks. Emily stood at the window, watching the gate, watching the road where Volkov had disappeared. 10 minutes later, Vance returned. Everything's fine. No anomalies. No power fluctuations. What were you expecting? Emily didn't answer. Because the truth was settling in her gut like lead. There had never been a failsafe. Volkov had lied. And she'd let him walk. She turned and walked out of the ICU, down the hall, past soldiers and staff who stepped out of her way without a word. She made it to the stairwell before Renner caught up. Carter. She stopped. He played you. I know. Then why did you let him go? Because I couldn't risk it. Her voice cracked just slightly. I couldn't risk them. So now he's gone, and we have nothing. Emily turned to face him. No, we have everything. What are you talking about? She pulled out her phone, opened the voice recorder app, showed him the screen. Recording. Timestamp starting from when she walked through the gate. He confessed to the attack, to Kellerman, to all of it, on record. Renner stared. You were recording? The whole time? That's... He stopped, almost smiled. That's inadmissible in court. You didn't inform him he was being recorded. I don't care about court. I care about leverage. She pocketed the phone. Now we know who he is, what he wants, and that he's still operational, which means he'll make a mistake. And when he does, I'll be waiting. Renner studied her for a long moment. You knew he was lying. Not at first, but by the time I figured it out, he was already gone. And you're okay with that? Emily looked out the window at the desert stretching toward the horizon. No, she said quietly, but I will be, when I find him again. Renner's radio crackled. Colonel, this is command. We've got a hit on Kellerman. Customs flagged him at the border. He's in custody. Renner keyed the mic. Where? El Paso, trying to cross into Mexico. Local PD has him. They're asking if we want him extradited. Tell them yes. And tell them to keep him isolated. No phone calls, no visitors. We're sending a team. Copy. Renner looked at Emily. You want in on the interrogation? No, I want to do it alone. That's not protocol. I don't care about protocol. Kellerman sold us out. He's the reason 15 people almost died. He's the reason Volkov knows where I am. Her voice went cold. So, yeah, I want him alone. Renner should have said no. Instead, he nodded. I'll make it happen. 18 hours later, Emily sat across from Major Kellerman in a windowless room in El Paso, watching him sweat. He was still in his civilian clothes, jeans, polo shirt, running shoes, looking like a man who'd made a terrible mistake and was just now realizing how terrible. Emily set a folder on the table between them. Didn't open it, just let it sit there. You know why you're here, she said. Kellerman swallowed. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, after you talk to me. That's not how this works. It is today. She leaned forward. You sold classified information to a foreign operative. You compromised the security of a military installation. You facilitated an attack that killed 2 people and wounded a dozen more. And you did it for money. I didn't know. Yes, you did. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew who Volkov was. You knew what he wanted, and you gave it to him anyway. Kellerman's hands were shaking. He said no one would get hurt. He said it was just reconnaissance. And you believed him. I didn't have a choice. I owed people. Bad people. They were going to kill me. Emily opened the folder. Inside were photos. The bodies from the East Wing, the burned storage room, the wounded soldiers. She spread them out on the table, one by one. These are the people who paid for your choices. Kellerman looked away. Look at them. I can't look at them. He did, and his face crumpled. Emily gathered the photos, put them back in the folder. You're going to tell me everything, every conversation, every transaction, every piece of information you gave Volkov, and then you're going to help me find him. I don't know where he is. Then you're going to help me figure it out, because right now you're the only leverage I have. And if you don't cooperate, I'll make sure everyone knows you're the reason those people died. Your career will be over. Your life will be over, and you'll spend the next 20 years in a cell wondering if it was worth it. Kellerman's voice came out as a whisper. What do you want? I want Volkov's network, his contacts, his safe houses, his financial infrastructure, everything. I don't have that. Then get it. You have 48 hours. After that, I hand you over to the feds, and you disappear. She stood, walked to the door. Wait. Kellerman's voice broke. Why are you doing this? Emily stopped, looked back. Because he's not done. And neither am I. She left him there. 72 hours later, Kellerman delivered. Not everything, but enough. Names, locations, a financial trail that led through 6 countries and ended at a private airfield outside Tripoli. Halston's people moved fast, coordinating with international partners, freezing accounts, issuing warrants. But Volkov stayed ahead of them, until he didn't. The call came at 0300, 3 days after Emily returned to Silvergate. Renner's voice, tense and urgent. We've got him. Satellite caught him at a compound outside Benghazi. He's barricaded, armed, refusing to surrender. Emily sat up in bed. What do you need? I need you to talk him down. Why would he listen to me? Because you're the only one he wants to talk to. She was on a plane 6 hours later. The plane touched down in Benghazi at dawn. The sky bruised purple and orange over a city that had seen too much war. Emily stepped onto the tarmac with nothing but the clothes on her back and a sidearm she knew she wouldn't be allowed to keep. A Humvee was waiting, engine running, exhaust cutting through the cold morning air. The driver was American, Special Forces, sunburned and silent. He didn't ask questions, just drove. The compound was 40 minutes outside the city, tucked into a valley surrounded by rocky hills that provided natural cover and about a dozen sniper positions. Emily counted them as they approached. Old habit, the kind that kept you breathing. The perimeter was crawling with personnel, mix of American contractors, Libyan military, and what looked like UN observers keeping their distance. Everyone armed, everyone tense. In the center of it all sat a single-story concrete building with reinforced walls and narrow windows. Volkov's fortress. Renner was waiting near the command tent, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. He saw Emily and walked over, voice low. He's been in there for 16 hours, hasn't fired a shot, hasn't made demands. Just keeps saying he'll only talk to you. Emily scanned the building. How many inside? Just him, as far as we can tell. Thermal shows one signature. No movement. He could have the place rigged. We know. Bombtex did a sweep with ground-penetrating radar. Found what looks like charges on every wall. Enough to bring the whole thing down. Dead man switch? Probably. Emily looked at Renner. So if I go in there and he dies, we all die. That's the assessment. And you're okay with that? I'm not okay with any of this, but you're the one he wants. And if there's a chance you can talk him down, end this without more bodies, then yeah, I'm asking you to try. She studied the building again. Single entrance. No rear exit visible. Windows too small to breach. It was a kill box. And Volkov knew it. What's my play? Go in unarmed. Talk to him. Get him to surrender or at least disarm the explosives. And if he won't? Renner's jaw tightened. Then you get out and we level the building. With me inside? We'll give you a 10-second warning. Generous. It's all I've got. Emily turned toward the building, then stopped. If I don't come out, make sure my patients are taken care of. Vance knows the protocols. You're coming out. Just in case. She walked toward the entrance before he could argue. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped into darkness that smelled like concrete dust and old sweat. The interior was bare. No furniture, no decorations, just empty rooms and hallways that echoed with every footstep. She moved slow, hands visible, making noise so Volkov would know she was coming. I'm here, she called out. Unarmed, alone, like you wanted. Silence. Then his voice, drifting from somewhere deeper in the building. Straight back, last room. She followed the sound, boots scraping on grit, until she reached a doorway at the end of the hall. The room beyond was lit by a single battery-powered lantern sitting on the floor. Volkov sat against the far wall, legs stretched out, hands resting in his lap. He looked smaller than she remembered, older, tired, but his eyes were sharp. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." "I hoped." He gestured to the floor across from him. "Sit." Emily stayed standing. "I'm not here to chat." "Then why are you here?" "To end this. By killing me. If I have to." Volkov smiled, faint and bitter. "You can't. The moment my heart stops, the charges blow. This building, the perimeter, everyone within 200 meters. Gone." "I know. And you still came." "Yeah." He studied her for a long moment. "You really have changed, haven't you? The Evelyn I knew would have put a bullet in me from outside and walked away. The Evelyn you knew doesn't exist anymore. Because you buried her, became Emily, the nurse, the healer." He leaned forward slightly. "But she's still in there. I saw her in the desert. I saw her in that bunker. You can pretend all you want, but you're still a killer." Emily's voice didn't waver. "I never pretended otherwise." "Then why run? Why hide behind a new name and a new life?" "Because I got tired of watching people die for no reason. Tired of being the reason they died. And nursing fixed that? It gave me something worth protecting." Volkov laughed, short and sharp. "You think saving lives makes you noble? It doesn't erase the ones you took." "I know." "Then what's the point?" Emily crouched down, slow, until she was eye level with him. "The point is trying. Every shift, every patient, every choice to help instead of hurt. That's the point. Not redemption, not forgiveness. Just trying to be better than I was." Volkov's smile faded. "And you think that's enough?" "It's all I've got." He looked away, stared at the lantern. The light threw shadows across his face, made the scar on his jaw look deeper. "I spent 6 years planning this. Finding you. Hurting you. I wanted you to feel what I felt. The loss. The rage. The emptiness." His voice dropped. "But now that I have you here, I realize something." "What?" "It doesn't fix anything. You're still here. I'm still broken. And all those people I killed to get to you, they're just ghosts now. More weight I can't carry." Emily sat down across from him, cross-legged, hands on her knees. "Then let them go." "How?" "By stopping. Right now. Disarm the charges. Walk out of here. Face what you've done." "You mean surrender?" "I mean take responsibility." Volkov shook his head. "They'll lock me up. Throw away the key. I'll die in a cell." "Probably. But at least you'll die knowing you chose to stop. That counts for something." "Does it?" "Ask me in 20 years. He laughed again, softer this time. Then the laughter died, and he just looked tired. "I don't have 20 years." Emily's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" He pulled back his jacket, showed her the medical alert bracelet on his wrist. "Stage 4, pancreatic. Doctor gave me 6 months. That was 4 months ago." "Jesus." "No, just cancer." He let the jacket fall back. "That's why I came out of hiding. Why I burned everything to find you. Because I knew I didn't have time to do it slow. And because I wanted one last fight. One last win. Against the person who took everything from me." Emily's throat tightened. "And now?" "Now I'm sitting in a room full of explosives, talking to a woman who should hate me, realizing I wasted what little time I had left on revenge." "Then don't waste what's left. What else is there?" "The truth. You said Kellerman helped you, but he's not the only one, is he?" Volkov's eyes flickered. "No." "Who else?" "Does it matter?" "It matters to the people who died. It matters to the people who might still die if your network keeps operating." He considered that, then reached into his pocket. Emily tensed, but he just pulled out a USB drive, held it up. "Everything. Names, accounts, operations. Enough to dismantle what's left of my organization and burn everyone who helped me. Why would you give me that?" "Because you're right. I'm dying anyway, and I'd rather it mean something than nothing." He tossed the drive across the floor. It landed near her boot. "Take it. Do what you do best. Destroy them." Emily picked it up, turned it over in her hand. "What about the charges?" "I'll disarm them. After you're gone." "How do I know you won't just blow the building anyway?" "You don't, but I've got no reason to lie anymore." He leaned back against the wall, closed his eyes. I'm tired, Evelyn. I just want it to be over. Emily stood slowly, pocketed the drive. My name is Emily. He opened his eyes. I know. She walked to the door, stopped, looked back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For Mosul, for your people, for all of it. No, you're not. You're right, I'm not. But I wish it could have been different. So do I. She left him there. Outside, the sun was higher, the desert heat already building. Renner met her halfway to the perimeter, eyes scanning her face. Well? Emily handed him the USB drive. Everything you need to shut down his network. He's disarming the charges. And him? He's done. What does that mean? It means he's not coming out. Renner grabbed her arm. Carter, if he's planning to... The explosion cut him off. Not massive. Not the world-ending blast they'd feared. Just a controlled detonation, precise and final, collapsing the building inward on itself. Dust and smoke billowed up, and when it cleared, there was nothing left but rubble. Emily stood there, watching, feeling nothing. Renner's voice was quiet. He killed himself. Yeah. Why? Because he was dying anyway, and he wanted to go out on his terms. That's insane. Maybe, but it's over. Renner stared at the wreckage, then at the drive in his hand. This better be worth it. It will be. It was. The intelligence on the drive was gold. Within 72 hours, Halston's team had mapped Volkov's entire network. Shell companies, arms dealers, corrupt officials, black market financiers spread across 4 continents. The operation moved fast and hard. Simultaneous raids in Dubai, Cyprus, Johannesburg, and Panama City. Arrests came in waves. Asset seizures totaled over $300 million. Weapons caches were discovered and destroyed. Shipping routes were shut down. Financial pipelines collapsed. 24 people who thought they were untouchable suddenly found themselves in handcuffs, facing charges that would keep them locked up for the rest of their lives. The news ran the story for a week straight. International conspiracy, military corruption, the whole thing. But Emily's name never appeared. Renner made sure of that. As far as the world knew, it was a joint task force operation. Anonymous, professional, clean. Kellerman flipped completely, gave testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. 20 years instead of life. He'd still die in prison, but at least he'd see daylight occasionally through a narrow window. Emily didn't feel sorry for him, but she didn't feel vindicated either. Just empty. Like closing a book she'd never wanted to read in the first place. And when it was all done, she flew home. Silvergate looked the same when she landed. Same desert, same barbed wire, same tired soldiers standing guard under the same relentless sun. But something felt different. Or maybe she was different. Hard to tell. Renner met her at the airfield, no fanfare, no speeches, just a nod. Welcome back. Good to be back. You sure about that? She looked at the hospital in the distance, at the ICU windows reflecting the afternoon light. Ask me tomorrow. He smiled. Fair enough? That night, Emily walked into the ICU at 1900, and 30 minutes before her shift started. Vance was at the nurse's station doing paperwork and looked up when Emily approached. Thought you'd take more time off. I've had enough time off. You were in Libya hunting a terrorist. That's not time off. Close enough. Emily glanced at the patient board. How are they? Stable. All of them. The Marine in bed too got extubated yesterday. He's already complaining about the food. Emily almost smiled. Sounds about right. Vance set down her pen, studied Emily for a moment. There's something you should know. What? Word got around. About what you did. Who you are. The whole base knows. Emily's stomach tightened. And? And nothing. They respect you. Some are scared of you. But mostly, they're just glad you're here. Scared? You killed 4 people in one night, Carter, then flew to Libya and dismantled an international arms network. That's not exactly standard nurse training. No, it's not. Vance studied her. You okay with it? Everyone knowing? Emily thought about that. About the weight of the secret she'd carried for 11 months. About the relief of not carrying it anymore. About walking through the compound earlier and seeing soldiers nod to her, actually seeing her instead of looking through her. Yeah, I think I am. Good, because Colonel Renner wants to see you tomorrow. Oh, 900, his office. What for? He didn't say, but he looked serious. Emily nodded. I'll be there. She was. At exactly 0900, she knocked on Renner's door and stepped inside. He was behind his desk, and sitting across from him were Halston, General Cartwright in his wheelchair, and a woman Emily didn't recognize. 50s, sharp suit, gray hair pulled back, calm eyes that missed nothing. Renner gestured to the empty chair. Sit. Emily sat. The woman spoke first. I'm Dr. Lindsay Marsh, director of the DoD's Special Operations Medical Training Program based at Fort Bragg. I've been reviewing your record. Both of them. Emily said nothing. You have a unique skill set, Marsh continued. Combat experience, medical expertise, the ability to operate under extreme pressure and make decisions that save lives even when the situation is falling apart. We don't see that combination often. In fact, we almost never see it. What are you asking? I'm offering a position. Training the next generation of combat medics, teaching them not just how to save lives, but how to protect themselves and their patients in hostile environments, how to think tactically, how to stay calm when everything around them is chaos. Emily looked at Renner. He nodded slightly, expression unreadable. She looked back at Marsh. Where? Fort Bragg, full instructor position. You design curriculum, lead field exercises, mentor candidates. We run 3 classes a year, each one 12 weeks. The washout rate is about 40%. We need people who've actually been there, who know what it's like when the theory breaks down and all you have left is instinct and training. And if I say no, then you stay here. Keep working the ICU. No judgment either way. But I'll be honest with you, Carter. You're wasted here. You've got skills that could save hundreds of lives if you pass them on. And right now, we're losing good medics because they're not prepared for what's out there. You could change that. Emily leaned back, let the words settle. Part of her wanted to stay, to keep the routine, the quiet, the distance from who she used to be, to go back to being invisible, to working her shifts and going home and pretending the last few weeks hadn't happened. But another part, the part that had spent the last week dismantling a terrorist network and talking down a dying man in a room full of explosives, knew that wasn't who she was anymore. Maybe it never had been. I need to think about it. Marsh nodded. Take your time, but not too much. We start the next class in 6 weeks. If you're in, I need to know in 2. She stood, shook Emily's hand, firm grip, direct eye contact, and walked out. Halston stood next, adjusted her jacket. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. I thought you were a liability, a security risk. Turns out you're an asset. A damn good one. Thanks. Don't let it go to your head. She shook Emily's hand, softer than Marsh, but still professional. Good luck, Carter, whatever you decide. She left. That left Renner, Cartwright, and Emily. The general wheeled himself closer. You've been through hell, Carter. Most people would break. You didn't. I came close. But you didn't, and that's what matters. He handed her a folder, official seal embossed on the front. This is your commendation. For actions above and beyond the call of duty, signed by me, countersigned by the Secretary of Defense. It goes in your permanent record, the real one. Emily opened it slowly, read the words, her name, her real name, and a detailed summary of what she'd done. Saving the hospital during the initial attack, neutralizing hostile forces, traveling to Libya to negotiate with Volkov, providing intelligence that led to the dismantling of an international criminal network. It felt surreal, like reading about someone else. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just keep doing what you do. Keep proving that the people everyone underestimates are the ones who change everything. He wheeled back, nodded once, and left. Renner stood, walked around the desk, leaned against it. So, what are you thinking? Emily looked at the commendation, then at him. I'm thinking I spent 11 months trying to be someone else. Someone quiet. Someone forgettable. And it didn't work. Not really. Because you can't run from who you are. No, but I can choose what I do with it. She closed the folder. I thought if I saved enough lives, it would balance out the ones I took. But it doesn't work like that, does it? No. So what's the point? Renner crossed his arms. The point is that you keep trying anyway. Not because it erases the past, but because the future deserves better. Those medics at Bragg, they're going to walk into the same situations you did. And if you teach them what you know, how to survive, how to make the hard calls, how to come home, you'll save lives you'll never even meet. Emily looked out the window, at the compound, at the desert stretching endlessly beyond. I'm going to Bragg. Renner smiled. Good. They need someone like you. What about here, the ICU? We'll survive. Vance can step up. She's been ready for a while, and honestly, he straightened, I think you've outgrown this place. Emily stood, extended her hand. Thank you. For everything. For believing me when no one else did. He shook it. Thank you for saving my people. and for reminding me that sometimes the best soldiers don't look like soldiers at all. She walked out of his office, down the hall, and back to the ICU one last time. Vance was waiting, arms crossed, trying to look stern and failing. So, I'm leaving in 6 weeks. Vance's face fell, just for a second. Then she nodded. Good, you should. You mean that? Yeah. You're too good to be stuck here doing the same thing every night. Those medics at Bragg are lucky to get you. Emily felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, just shifting. I'm gonna miss this. Liar. Emily smiled. Okay, I'm going to miss you. Better. Vance pulled her into a quick, awkward hug that lasted longer than either of them expected. Don't be a stranger. I won't. Hayes appeared from the supply room, looking uncomfortable. You're really going? Yeah. He searched for words. That's cool. I mean, it sucks for us. But it's cool for you. Thanks, Hayes. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry I called you a robot. You're not a robot. You're like a really intense human. Emily laughed, actual laughter, for the first time in weeks. I'll take it. Marquez came over next, quiet as always, and just handed Emily a folded piece of paper. From all of us. Emily unfolded it. A card. Handmade. Signed by every staff member in the ICU. We'll miss you, Carter. Don't forget us. I won't, she said, voice rougher than she intended. I promise. That night, Emily worked her last shift at Silvergate. Checked vitals, changed dressings, adjusted drips, talked to the patients who were awake, reassured the ones who were scared. The Marine in bed too, the one who'd been extubated, asked her if it was true she'd killed terrorists. Yeah, Emily said. It's true. Damn, that's badass. She almost laughed. Thanks. You gonna keep doing it, the killing stuff? No. I'm gonna teach people how to save lives, in places where saving lives is really, really hard. He considered that, nodded slowly. That's badass too. I'll take it. At 700, her shift ended. She walked out of the ICU, through the hospital corridors one last time, past the storage room where she'd disarmed Volkov's bomb, past the east wing that had been rebuilt after the attack, out into the parking lot where the desert sun was already climbing, turning the sky from gray to gold. The same sun she'd watched for 11 months, the same sky, the same endless horizon. But this time, she wasn't running from it. She was walking toward something new. 6 weeks later, Emily stood in front of a classroom at Fort Bragg. 30 candidates stared back at her, men and women, all young, all eager, all convinced they were ready for war because they'd passed basic training and advanced medical courses. She knew better. My name is Emily Carter, she said, voice carrying to the back of the room. I'm going to teach you how to save lives under fire, how to make decisions when there's no time and no backup, how to stay calm when everything around you is falling apart, how to prioritize when you've got 5 casualties and supplies for 2, and most importantly, she looked each of them in the eye, how to come home when it's over. One of them raised a hand. Young woman, maybe 22, nervous. What if we can't? Come home, I mean. Then you keep trying, every day, every patient, every choice to help instead of hurt, because that's the job. Not heroics, not glory, just showing up and doing the work even when it breaks you. She paused, let that sink in. Some of you won't make it through this program, some of you will wash out in week 3 when we do the live fire trauma scenarios. Some will realize this isn't for you when you're up for 72 hours straight and still expected to perform flawlessly. And that's okay. Better to know now than in the field when lives are on the line. She walked to the front of her desk, perched on the edge. But for those who stay, her voice hardened. I'm going to push you harder than you've ever been pushed. I'm going to put you in situations that feel impossible. I'm going to make you watch training videos of real casualties, people bleeding out, screaming, begging you to save them. I'm going to simulate equipment failures and ambushes and scenarios where every choice you make is wrong and you still have to choose. One of the candidates in the back shifted uncomfortably. I'm doing this, Emily continued, not because I'm cruel, but because the people you're going to treat deserve someone who won't quit, who won't freeze, who won't run when it gets hard. They deserve the best version of you, and my job is to build that version, even if it means tearing down who you think you are right now. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the training grounds where obstacle courses and mock combat zones stretched into the distance. You're going to learn that strength isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the job anyway. It's about being invisible until the moment you're not. about being underestimated until you prove them wrong. She turned back to the class. And when you graduate, if you graduate, you're going to walk into war zones and disaster sites, and places where everything is broken, where command is gone and comms are down and you're the only medical personnel for miles. And you're going to fix what you can, save who you can, and carry the ones you couldn't. The same young woman raised her hand again. How do you live with that? The ones you can't save? Emily thought about Mosul, about the teammates who didn't come home, about the patients she'd lost over 11 months at Silvergate despite doing everything right, about Volkov sitting in a room full of explosives, choosing his own end because he couldn't carry the weight anymore. You don't? Not really. You just carry them. Let them remind you why the work matters, why showing up matters, why trying matters even when you fail. The room was silent. Then one of them started clapping, slowly, then another, then all of them, standing, applauding like she'd just given them permission to be human in a job that demanded they be perfect. Emily didn't stop them. She just stood there, feeling the weight of every life she'd taken and every life she'd saved, knowing with absolute certainty that this, right here, teaching these people to be better than she'd been, was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not hiding, not running, not pretending to be someone else. Just her. Emily Carter, former operator, former killer, current healer, future teacher, flawed, scarred, still carrying ghosts, still trying. And that was enough. The weeks blurred together after that. Teaching became breathing. She ran them through scenarios until their hands moved without thinking, taught them to assess casualties in seconds, to prioritize ruthlessly, to work while bullets were flying and buildings were burning. She showed them how to stay calm when someone was bleeding out in their arms, how to make the call when you had 1 dose of epinephrine and 2 patients in cardiac arrest, how to live with choosing. Some washed out, quit, couldn't handle the pressure or the responsibility or the weight of knowing that one mistake could cost a life. Emily didn't judge them, just helped them process out and wish them well. But the ones who stayed, they were steel. By week 8, they were running full-scale trauma drills with live ammunition, simulated IEDs, and role players screaming in pain. Emily watched from the observation deck, calling out complications over the radio. Casualty 3 just went into shock. Casualty 1's airway is compromised. You've got 30 seconds before the next explosion. She watched them adapt, watched them fail, watched them try again. And she saw herself in every single one of them. Later that night, she sat alone in her quarters, staring at a photo Vance had mailed her, the entire ICU staff at Silvergate, smiling, holding a banner that said, "We'll miss you, Carter." Hayes was in the front, grinning like an idiot. Marquez beside him, reserved but warm. Vance in the back, arms crossed, trying not to look emotional and failing completely. Emily set the photo on her desk, next to her commendation and a small wooden box Renner had given her before she left. Inside was a challenge coin, Silvergate Military Hospital, custom made, with her name engraved on the back. Reminders of where she'd been, what she'd done, who she'd become. She pulled out a notebook, opened to a blank page, and started writing. Not a report, not a debrief, not a lecture, just thoughts. About strength that doesn't announce itself. About the people who save lives in the shadows while others take credit in the light. About choosing to help instead of hurt, even when hurting is easier. About proving that the quiet ones, the underestimated ones, the ones everyone overlooks, they're often the most dangerous, not because they want to be, but because they have to be. She wrote until her hand cramped, then closed the notebook and walked to the window. Outside, the training grounds were dark. Tomorrow, they'd be full again. Candidates running drills, failing, getting up, trying again, learning what she'd learned, that you don't have to be loud to be powerful, you don't have to be seen to be essential, and you don't have to be perfect to make a difference. You just have to show up, do the work, and never, ever let them make you believe you're less than you are. Emily pressed her hand against the glass, felt the cold seep through, and made herself a promise. She would teach them everything, the tactics, the skills, the mindset, the truth that no manual could give them, that the world needs people who heal in the places where healing seems impossible, who protect those who can't defend themselves, who stand between chaos and the innocent. The world needs people who were broken and chose to rebuild, who were invisible and chose to matter anyway, who were underestimated and proved everyone wrong. The world needs people like her, and she was done apologizing for it. 12 weeks later, Emily stood at graduation, watched 23 candidates, the ones who'd survived, who'd earned it, receive their certifications, watched their families cry with pride, watched Marsh give a speech about excellence and dedication. And when it was over, when the families had left and the candidates had scattered to celebrate, Marsh found Emily in the empty auditorium. "You did good work," Marsh said. "They did the work. I just showed them the way." "That's what teaching is." Marsh handed her a folder. "Next class starts in 4 weeks. I need you to run point on the curriculum redesign. Make it tougher. Better. More realistic." Emily took the folder. "You want me to make it harder?" "I want you to make it honest. These kids are going into hell. They deserve to be prepared. And if the washout rate goes up, then we're doing it right. Better they quit here than freeze in the field." Marsh studied her. "You know that better than anyone." Emily nodded. "I'll do it." "Good." Marsh turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Carter, you're exactly what this program needed. Someone who's been there, someone who survived it, someone who came back. I almost didn't. But you did. That's what matters." She left. Emily stood alone in the auditorium, holding the folder, feeling the weight of what came next. More classes, more students, more lives she could shape, could prepare, could save by teaching them what she'd learned the hard way. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just work, the kind that mattered. That night, Emily sat at her desk and opened her laptop, started drafting the new curriculum, scenarios based on real operations, real failures, real decisions she'd made, and the consequences that followed. She wrote for hours, pulling from memories she'd tried to bury. Mosul, Kandahar, the hospital attack at Silvergate, Volkov's bunker in the desert, all of it, the good, the bad, the choices that haunted her. She put it all on the page, because if these candidates were going to survive, they needed to know the truth. That combat medicine wasn't about heroics, it was about staying calm while everything burned, about choosing who lived when you couldn't save everyone, about carrying the weight of those choices for the rest of your life, and doing it anyway. When she finished, the sun was coming up. Emily saved the file, closed the laptop, and walked outside. The base was quiet, just the sound of wind and distant traffic and the world waking up. She stood there, breathing the cool morning air, and for the first time in 6 years felt something she'd thought was gone forever. Peace. Not because the past was erased, not because the ghosts were gone, but because she'd finally found a way to live with them, to carry them forward instead of running away, to turn pain into purpose. Emily pulled out her phone, opened her messages, and typed a text to Vance. "Made it through first class. 23 graduated. You'd be proud." The response came 30 seconds later. "I already was. Stay safe, Carter." Emily smiled, pocketed the phone, and walked back inside. There was work to do, lives to save, people to teach, a future to build. And for the first time since she'd buried Evelyn and become Emily, she wasn't just surviving, she was living, on her terms, with purpose, with meaning, with the quiet, unshakable knowledge that the people everyone underestimates, the ones who don't shout, who don't demand attention, who just show up and do the impossible, are the ones who change everything. She'd been that person in the shadows for 11 months, and now she was going to teach a generation of medics to be the same, to be invisible until it mattered, to be underestimated until they proved the world wrong, to be strong in the quiet ways that save lives. Emily Carter walked into her office, sat down, and got back to work. Because the world needed healers, and she was done pretending she wasn't one of them. The end.